Hi there! In this video, we're going to talk about conditionals and negations. So first we just kind of have to learn what they even are. So conditionals are what we call if-then statements. And they have what's called a truth value, which means the statement can either be marked as true or it can be marked as false. And then the other thing we're going to talk about are negations, which are just the opposites of statements that we make. So in order to talk about that, we first need to dive more into what is a conditional and how it's made up. So if we go down to this part and we look at a conditional statement, a conditional has two parts. It has the part that's called the hypothesis, which is the part that comes directly after the if, and the part that's called the conclusion, which comes directly after the then. And typically, we write in what's called symbolic form, or like abbreviations or shorthand. We say that the hypothesis is written using the letter P, and the conclusion is written using the letter Q, and we use the word, this arrow represents the word then. So if you see something that says P then Q, they're talking about a conditional statement. This really says right here, if P then Q, even though the if is not written. So we're going to work on identifying the part of the conditional statement that is the hypothesis, the part of the conditional statement that is the conclusion, and then we're going to work on writing in symbolic form each of those conditional statements and a little bit about negation. So first thing that we're going to do is look at this conditional statement that says, if it is Monday, then I go to work. Remember, a conditional statement can either be true or false. We'll talk more about that next time. But if you're thinking, if it is Monday, then I go to work, well, that might be true for some of you and it might be false for some of you. But it doesn't matter whether it's true or false. It just matters what we're talking about an actual conditional statement. So the hypothesis, remember, is the part that comes after the if. So the hypothesis in this case would be, it is Monday. You don't include the word if. The conclusion comes after the word then. So the conclusion here is, I go to work. Okay. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about abbreviating or using what's called symbolic form to write out a hypothesis and a conclusion, or to write out the whole conditional statement. Why do we do this? Well, because it's like shorthand. I don't have to write as much, because this whole chapter, there's a lot of writing. So if we use symbols, it's definitely less writing for us to do. And sometimes it's a little bit easier to understand, actually. So when we're abbreviating, we said that the hypothesis is usually represented by the letter P, and the conclusion is usually represented by the letter Q. Sometimes it's easier, though, to use your own letters, and that's what I like to do because it helps me remember what my statements were. So I like to pick like the main idea or the main word in each statement. So like for this one that says, it is Monday, I would pick M for Monday. And in the second part, the conclusion that says, I go to work, I would pick W for work. So if I wanted to write the symbolic form, I would literally write M, then W. You could write, if you chose P and Q, you could write it P, then Q. But I like to choose letters that match along with what my statements say, so that it helps me remember what I'm reading. Next, okay, negation. It means to make the hypothesis or the conclusion have the opposite truth value. So basically, I'm thinking of it kind of like a negative sign when I'm multiplying numbers. So if I wanted to negate the hypothesis and the conclusion of my conditional statement, if it is Monday, then I go to work. The negation of it is Monday would be It is not Monday. You just add the word not. Sometimes you have to write is not or does not in order to make the sentence make sense. But basically you're adding the word not. So it is not Monday is going to be my negation. Oops, and I already had that written down. So it is not Monday, and sometimes they'll even have it is not the case that it is Monday. So they'll use this. Whoops, I highlighted too far. It is not the case. If you see that in there, that's also another way that they can negate something. Now, you'll notice over here that I have this like squiggly over here. That's how I write it using a symbol. This squiggly is technically called a tilde. I like to just use the word squiggly. So that's talking about not. And if I'm reading it, I would say not P or not M, because I used M above to abbreviate this. So when you see, you don't say squiggly M or squiggly P, you say the proper way to say this mathematically is not M or not P, however you chose, whatever letter you chose. So I go to work if I wanted to negate this, or I would say I do not go to work, or it is not the case that I go to work, and I would abbreviate this and say it is not Q, or above we chose W, so I would say this is not W. Okay. So in this example, we're going to have to choose hypotheses, conclusions, and negate some stuff. All right, so give the hypothesis and conclusion of the conditional below. If Joe has been exercising, then Joe is wearing tennis shoes. Okay, so the hypothesis, Joe has been exercising. This one is my hypothesis because it comes after the if. The conclusion, Joe is wearing tennis shoes, is my conclusion because it comes after the then. So let's write this out in symbolic form. So let's pick some letters that you would want to use for our abbreviations. Okay, Joe has been exercising. I'm probably going to pick E for exercising. And Joe is wearing tennis shoes. I'm probably going to pick P for tennis shoes. So if I wanted to write this in symbolic form, I would say E, then T. If Joe is exercising, has been exercising, then Joe's wearing tennis shoes. Okay, if I want to negate the conclusion both in descriptive form, which means using a sentence, and in symbolic form, that means using the abbreviation. So I'm going to start abbreviations first. So I'm going to say not E. And what does that mean? That means Joe has not been exercising. Whoops, has not been exercising. Okay, and then I have not T. That's my symbolic form. So what does that mean? That means Joe is not wearing tennis shoes. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. Also know, by the way, that when you negate something, you literally just want to use the word not, like, or not the case. Like, you don't want to change the subject or say, like, Joe is not wearing tennis shoes is the negation. You just don't want to say, like, Joe is wearing flip-flops. You are literally taking the statement and making it the opposite of the original statement that they gave you. So the total opposite of Joe is wearing tennis shoes is Joe is not wearing tennis shoes. You don't want to change up any of the subjects or like the topic of the sentence or the statement, because that's not the negation. The negation is literally just the word not. So let me know if you have any questions or it doesn't make any sense, and good luck.